Alright, let's get straight into it. Is Assassin's Creed a game worth your time and money, or is it just another repackaged Ubisoft open world checklist? We're going to cover everything: combat mechanics, build implications, the gear system, the wanted system, stealth, open world design, Ubisoft's track record, the leaks, and ultimately whether this franchise is on the verge of failing. So let's get into it. Okay, Ubisoft knows what fans have been asking for: feudal Japan, real samurai combat in a world that feels more immersive. On the surface, Shadows seems to deliver, but let's break down the actual mechanics. The combat. If you love melee focused combat with impact and brutality, Yasuke is your guy. Despite the historical accuracies or inaccuracies everyone's arguing about online, his playstyle is all about overwhelming force, parries that break stances, heavy strikes that stagger enemies, and armor that lets him tank hits like no Assassin's Creed character ever before. But here's the thing that gets tricky. Is it actually challenging? Let's be real, Ubisoft games have a habit of being too easy. If every enemy drops like a ragdoll the moment you press 2 buttons, then what's the point of a deep combat system that Assassin's Creed Shadow is trying to propose? That's a genuine concern with Yasuke. If the game lets you just bulldoze through enemies with minimal resistance, then the entire weight of his combat system becomes meaningless, literally. But here's the counterbalance. The Samurai Daisho, elite NPCs and Samurai Guardians introduced in the wanted system, these aren't your regular sword fodder. Samurai Daisho are high-ranking warriors with precise timing and parries, meaning button smashing won't work here. So this is going to force you to dig into your bag of tricks to overcome this. Elite NPCs are handcrafted encounters with unique abilities and patterns, closer to mini-bosses than regular enemies. And Samurai Guardians from the wanted system is something I'm particularly interested in. They are a direct countermeasure to your actions. If you go in guns blazing, these guys will track you, flank you, and make you regret not playing smarter. This is both ends of the spectrum, and if Ubisoft gets this balance right, we might actually have the first Assassin's Creed game where combat doesn't feel like an afterthought. But if it turns into a parry spam simulator where enemies fold like paper, then Shadows risks being another style over substance experience. That's something I hate in games, even in the debate of graphics over gameplay. I always prefer gameplay, even if the graphics suffer a little bit, just because I want a great experience. And I think many gamers resonate with that. They will understand. But ultimately, I think that in this day and age with technology and gaming, you can do both. You just have to take the time and know what the gamer wants. But let's talk about Naoe in contrast. Is it actually returning to Assassin's Creed's roots? Because Naoe is what Assassin's Creed should have always been: stealth first, agile, and built around infiltration rather than brute force. And here's why this is a big deal. She has parkour, but it's not really superhuman physics. Ubisoft confirmed her movement will be more deliberate, focused on actual stealth rather than fantasy acrobatics, which is good. Noise and visibility matter, which is awesome. Shadow is bringing back light-based detection, noise-based stealth, and environmental blending. Actual assassinations that require planning. Some targets will require setups, luring, and well-timed executions rather than just pressing X to kill. I noticed in the gameplay when she threw a smoke bomb, and this mechanic was actually a segue to her performing assassinations out in the open, because the smoke bomb gave her a hidden status, temporarily. So if this is done right, Naoe's gameplay could finally be a return to what made Assassin's Creed great in the first place. But if done wrong, it could feel like a watered down Arkham stealth system, where enemies have goldfish memory and barely react to their allies dying. But this is a huge concern right now. Early impressions of the gameplay footage and leaks suggest that enemy AI is still painfully bad. Guards often don't react properly to bodies falling near them. Patrol routes are simplistic and easily exploitable, and stealth takedowns in broad daylight barely trigger alarms. If this is true, it kills any sense of challenge. Stealth should feel tense, with guards reacting intelligently, adjusting their behavior. Now, I've seen that a little bit, and there's only so much I could decipher from watching gameplay alone. And on the combat side, enemies need to be more than just meat shields. Samurai Daisho and elite NPCs shouldn't just feel like tougher enemies based on their HP, and it looks like that based on what I said before, but they actually need to adapt, counter, and put pressure on the player. And I did notice that certain enemies are standing around waiting for their turn to attack. In actual game development, that's a thing though, so that the game can't be too difficult. But I mean, if the protagonist has the tools they need to evade and counter, I don't see the problem with it. I'm simply highlighting this because it's been a problem in Ubisoft games for years. And if they haven't fixed it by now, why should we believe Shadows will be any different? And here's another aspect that people are interested in, the gear system. Is it actually meaningful? I will say this, gear in Shadows is actually designed around how you play. Yasuke's armor sets dictates his playstyle. If you go full tank, you might be able to absorb multiple hits, but you'll sacrifice a lot of movement speed. Naoe's gear affects stealth effectiveness. Some gear might let her blend in better, move silently, or take out enemies without alerting others. Here's the problem though. Ubisoft has done this before and it's always felt half-baked. Does gear actually force a meaningful decision? We're hoping the gear won't be best just based on it being the highest number. Because if that's the case, Ubisoft hasn't learned anything. There's no real trade-off. I did notice that when Naoe was on the rooftops looking at a samurai daisho and another enemy NPC, the eagle vision allowed her to notice the samurai's health and armor, and whatever gear she had on depicted how much damage it would deal to that armor. She had to go into her inventory and swap out weapons to affect the outcome of the assassination so that it can be successful. Was this the simple switch of putting on a higher level weapon? I don't know. The wanted system. Now, this is one of the most ambitious mechanics Ubisoft has added. The ability to actually suffer real consequences for being reckless. Kill too many people, your wanted level increases, guards start hunting you, and if you reach a high enough notoriety, elite samurai guardians will track you down. Very cool mechanic. This could be brilliant if it's balanced right. If escaping is too easy, then it's just a gimmick. If it's too punishing, then it becomes tedious rather than engaging. The real question is, will this system actually evolve over time? Meaning, if it's just a one-dimensional kill equals more enemies loop, then it's gonna get old fast. Okay, now, we have to talk about the other end of the spectrum, and that's the problems. Why you might want to skip this game. It might still be another Ubisoft disaster. Formulaic Ubisoft design, same game, different setting. We've seen it before, okay? Let's be honest. Origins was supposed to reinvent the franchise. Odyssey was supposed to expand RPG mechanics. Valhalla was supposed to perfect it. Ubisoft promised a refined experience, no excessive grinding, a more personal story, and deeper, more impactful combat. Instead, we got even more filler. The game was massive, but not in a good way. Instead of meaningful content, it stretched out objectives to artificially inflate playtime. The settlement system was shallow. It was marketed as a hub that evolves over time, but in reality, it was just a glorified checklist with minimal impact on the world. Combat felt weighty, but still repetitive, despite adding two-handed weapons and finishers. Enemy variety was limited, making battles predictable after a few hours. So if Shadows repeats these mistakes, if the world is stuffed with meaningless tasks, and if gear progression is just another numbers game, it won't matter how good the setting is. It'll be just another Assassin's Creed game that feels fun for the first 10 hours before turning into a chore. So this is a valid concern, right? Can they even be trusted? Ubisoft has a terrible habit of launching half-baked games, microtransactions, and full of grind-to-win mechanics. The XP boosters of Valhalla made it clear Ubisoft will happily slow down your progress to sell time-saving packs. And don't let me get started with Far Cry and Watch Dogs, how broken that was. When I played Far Cry back in the day, I would quickly get bored with the pointless side content to extend playtime artificially. So why should we believe that Shadows won't suffer the same fate? I mean, do they even have control? Let's not forget Shadows was leaked and sold before launch. That tells us two things. Someone inside Ubisoft clearly doesn't care about protecting this game, or a rogue employee thought leaking it was worth the risk. But what does that say about Ubisoft's leadership? Maybe it was intentional. Who knows? Since they might have thought the game would have been a disaster anyway. So what's the verdict? Will you buy it or skip it? What are the pros and cons? Here are the pros if you decide to purchase it. You want a feudal Japan set in the beautiful open world design, you're interested in the most refined combat mechanics in the franchise's history, and you want a meaningful wanted system and real build diversity. Finally, and here are the cons. You're tired of Ubisoft's formulaic open world games, you don't trust Ubisoft to avoid microtransactions and an artificial grind, or you think combat might be too easy or more of just the same that we've experienced for years of Assassin's Creed titles. This game will either be the redemption of Assassin's Creed or proof that Ubisoft is creatively bankrupt. If Shadows fails, it won't just be a bad game, it'll be the beginning of the end of the franchise. So will you buy it or skip it? Let me know down in the comment section and tell me what you think about this discussion down below. I appreciate you for stopping by and watching to the end. Make sure you like the video if you liked it, and subscribe to my channel if you're new here. I'll see you in the next one. Be right out.